very laid back. So if you want to have a cup of coffee in the middle, or
Nice.
whatever you want to do,
All right, cool.
you just do it, and it's really laid back, and it's like just a chat for aspiring TV and radio people, and
Inspiring types. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
which is really cool. So thank you very much for joining us, young
No
man,
problem.
and welcome to our little Presenter Academy chat. I've made a few notes here about you. So
Oh.
you were born at a very early age, and then immediately went straight into radio. Tell us about your beginnings in Southampton, like, you know, post nappies but pre-radio. That bit where you sort of like were about 15 or something.
Okay. I kind of wanted to do radio since I was probably about 8 or 9, and I used to listen to Radio 1 primarily because where I was from in Southampton, we didn't actually have any local radio at that point. This is before the days of Ocean FM, so Radio 1 was kind of the thing to listen to, and also you could just about pick up Capital if you tried hard enough, and that station used to excite me with yourself on it at the time, and various other people. I thought it sounded a very fast-moving, very slick, very exciting station. It sounded like a London station, and that was the kind of place, that and Radio 1, where I thought, oh, it sounds incredible. It, like, to me, at the time, in my room in a small house in Southampton, it just felt huge. And that excited me. However, I wasn't the most confident child or teenager, so it was one of those things, like being an astronaut. It's one of those jobs that you were never going to get. And then I guess I was mostly doing shows in my bedroom up until the age of about 11 or 12, just to my mum. And then actually, my mum called up the hospital radio station for me in Southampton when I was 12 and said, will you come down and do some voluntary help? Can he come down and do some voluntary help? And they said yes. So I literally used to go there every Tuesday night and just watch what happened. And I wasn't allowed to do anything because I was too young, but I was fascinated by what they were doing and what the presenters were saying and how they put shows together. And that was my first kind of experience, really, of running a radio show. I did that for a couple of years. They decided that I really shouldn't be there because I think there was something to do with I wasn't insured to work the equipment or something. Boring. So I then skipped forward a few years. I wrote to my local radio station, which was Ocean at the time, and Power FM in Southampton. And I was 15, I think, there, maybe 14 or 15. And I tried to get work experience there for school, but that didn't happen. And then eventually, so I did my work experience at the Echo, the Evening Echo in Southampton, which was fun, but not really what I wanted to do, but still media. And then I managed to get some voluntary work on a Saturday afternoon when I wasn't at school, working on the sports show on Ocean, which is like, I don't know anything about sport, but that didn't really matter because it got me in the station and it got me, you know, looking around and seeing what was what and meeting people. And I did that every week for probably about a year. And then there was a guy called Chris Carnegie who was running the radio stations at the time. And he kind of was aware that I wanted to work in radio. I did him several demo tapes, which were pretty awful. And then one day, like on the spot, without me knowing, literally on the hoof, he said, right, come into the studio now, and you've got to do a show now. And it's not on air, but I want you to try and do a show. I can't really remember how well that went. But in his eyes, it went well enough for me to get my first show on the station. And I think I think I just left school. I think it was the May or June of that year.
Amazing.
And then and then luckily for me, obviously it was the summer, so loads of DJs were going on holiday. So the first one went all right. He was holding my hand there all the way through the show. I was terrified. And then from there, I just got little bits and pieces of fill-in work when people were off, because at that time, at that radio station in Fareham, there were 4 services running out of one building. So that's a lot of DJs at the time to to fill in if they're off. So I was very lucky in that sense of that there was a lot of opportunity to fill in.
Did you get a chance to make the tea for anybody and poison it so they were off for any longer?
No, I didn't. But like I said, it was the summer, so it was quite good in a way that I got to fill in so quickly. I also remember doing shows where I was completely out of my depth. I mean, they had all these shows on Ocean, which is kind of the grown-up adult contemporary channel, which covered kind of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And I remember Chris Carnegie did the breakfast show, and I think it may have been the September of that year, September, October, end of the year. He was like, right, I want you to do the breakfast show for a week on Ocean. And I was like, completely out of my depth. I was doing business news, reading it and not knowing what it was on about. I was doing Tide Times and all sorts of things that I had absolutely no idea about, but I just blagged it.
Good for you. People who dream of being a pop star kind of sing into hairbrushes. I've done some shows once called Hairbrush Divas. And what's the radio equivalent? What did you do to do those radio shows upstairs in your room for your mum? What was the setup like?
To be honest, I just practiced to nobody. And I think I remember kind of not mocking, but kind of I would record a link from a presenter from Capital or from Radio 1, and I would try and probably not copy it, but kind of emulate it to see if I could get from the start of the link to the end of the link. And often I couldn't. And then I remember having a massive confidence crisis one day in my bedroom and thinking, well, I'm never going to be able to do this because I don't think I'm confident enough. I don't think that people will really want to hear what I've got to say. And I can't seem to get from the start of the link to the finish of the link. I mean, I was pretty hard on myself because I was probably about 14 at the time. But for a while, I said to myself in my head that I would just become like a background person, maybe like a technical operator or a producer, because I didn't think that I had the skill to do it. So I did have that thing of like, can I do this? Even though I really wanted to, and I really looked up to these people on the radio, I wasn't quite sure that I had what it took.
Okay. Some presenters pretend that they were successful before they were. Did you ever do that?
Do they?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, they sort of do sit in their bedroom and pretend that they are actually, superstars before they actually make it.
Oh, no, I never did that. I didn't have enough confidence. No, I mean, and also when I got into radio, when I was working at Ocean, it never occurred to me that one day I would be on Radio 1. I was just quite happy being in radio and working through the stations that I was working at. And I was very lucky that I had a good set of stations that I worked up through. I mean, it was Ocean and Power in Southampton, then it was GWR in Bristol, and then Piccadilly, Key 103 in Manchester, and then London, Heart. So I had a really good rise up. But all through that time, I never pretended to be more successful than I was. I knew what the job was. And also, I didn't really think, I've got to be honest with you, that I didn't really think about Radio 1. I was too busy getting on with making my show on that station, whichever one it was, the best it could be.
Fair enough, fair enough. What about rejection? Have you ever had to deal with rejection, or have you just had everybody say yes all the time?
No, I've had so much rejection. I remember when I was at... there's been a lot of rejection. I remember when I was at Ocean, I was getting paid literally peanuts, and I decided to send out a demo cassette, and it was... I mean, I've got them upstairs. Like, I've literally got maybe 50 or 60 from different stations, including Radio 1. Wow. The Radio 1 one says, do not apply to us too often or you will end up on our DJ pest pile.
Fantastic.
Which I need to get that out one day.
Yeah, you should take that in and show them.
Yeah. So there's that one. I had all sorts from like Chiltern, Essex FM, a lot of stations that probably weren't even as big as the one I was on. saying that I wasn't really for them. So yeah, I had a lot of radio rejection, and loads more TV rejection. So many more. I went through a stage of getting in touch with people at CBBC and Blue Peter and all those shows that Going Live that were on at the time, or what became Live and Kicking. And because I was working in radio and I was young and I had spiky hair, I always got the interview or sometimes even an audition. But when it came to the audition process, my nerves totally got the better of me. I never got one job, and I've got so many letters from every station going. Like, I remember this horrendous audition I did at Nickelodeon in London, and I wasn't living in London at the time, and London to me then was like big, scary. Oh my God, it's London! You know, you've made it if you work here, and the whole thing totally overwhelmed me. I went into the Nickelodeon offices, I think, which were in Soho at the time.
Yeah, I remember.
They asked me to do it
just off Tottenham Court Road, I think, and they had a big SpongeBob SquarePants in the window, and it really shone out. And you went, "Whoa, yeah, I remember it. It used to be an office."
I don't know it's there now. Is it?
So, no.
But you remember the one? It was very brightly coloured, and I was like, "This is what I want to do," you know. And they asked me to do a 2-minute audition where I had to talk to a sock puppet, and then introduce the next show. And I fell apart. I mean, I just didn't know what I was doing. So yeah, I mean, I would get rejection letters every week at that point.
Now, what I find interesting about what you've just said, and what I didn't know about you, is I always thought you were a 100% radio guy who had succeeded in television as well, from doing Top of the Pops and The Lottery and all the other things you've done, and your documentaries abroad and everything you've done is really good. But I thought you got that from radio, but you wanted to be on the telly as well, which is quite rare.
Well, I think what was happening was that when I got to London, I was on Heart for the launch of Heart in London, which is an amazing thing to do. But I was still very young then, and I just thought, well, now that I'm in London, I should try and give this a go. So I mean, this was later on in the process. This is when, by the time I'd got to London, or maybe towards the end of me being in Manchester, and I thought, well, I might as well just give it a go because it might be fun and it might be something that I could do. However, none of those materialised. So what you're saying is correct. Pretty much the only television that I ended up doing was after Radio 1 came along. And actually, what a lot of people don't know is that I did this, before doing Top of the Pops, I did this kind of spin-off of Top of the Pops on a channel which is now gone, called UK Play. And it was a bit like MTV. It was a bit like the Request show they used to have on MTV. In fact, it went up against that in the afternoon, and it was me and Vernon Kay and Josie Darby and lots of people like that. Jake Humphrey used to do it, and it was a chance for all of us to kind of do a show, a 3-hour TV show every day, taking requests and callers. Where you had the BBC resources, because it was made at Television Centre, because it was part BBC, part Flextech. So you had all the resources. You had like 3 cameras, and you were in one of the studios at TVC. However, luckily, nobody watched it. So you could make all of your mistakes, but you were in a very professional television setup with an earpiece and with cameras that you had to talk to and with a floor manager. It probably wouldn't happen now because it probably cost quite a lot of money with no viewers. But what a brilliant way to kind of learn the craft. And that from there, that's when I went on to do the main Top of the Pops and a show called Planet Pop on Channel 4. But I really think that helped me.
Give us an insight into audition tapes, Scott. I know it's a very different time now in 2012 compared to when you started, but what would a young, aspiring radio or TV presenter now do? What would they need to deliver to a radio or TV station to get a job?
I think that in terms of radio, it's harder than it's ever been, I think, because obviously there are less places to work because of networking. Having said that, I hear a lot of DJs that are kind of constrained by the format. And I think that what I always tried to do in a format that was quite a heavy format is just try, and even if it's in 20 seconds, try and get your personality in, because I hear a lot of DJs now that kind of, I couldn't tell you their name, and I couldn't tell them apart. I've got to be honest. And a lot of the time that's not their fault. That's because the station wants you to not be able to tell them apart, because they want the big glossy sound, which I do understand. But I have also been in that position, and I have to say, I don't think that I really got to be myself, properly myself, on the radio until Radio 1. What I would say is, you know, just try and stand out without being annoying, and also don't be, but at the same time, this is a really hard one to say, like, don't be too adventurous, and don't do a 10-minute link about what you had for dinner either. Just kind of get it tight, but also try and get some of you in there, because ultimately that is what will make you stand out from all the others that sound the same.
Okay, so people have got to deliver something that's short and sweet, but interesting enough to be take them to the next level and get an interview, maybe.
I think so, and I think also, which is very important, which people sometimes forget when they're doing their personality demo, is that you should include a sell for the station, or for the music, or for a promotion that is on the station, because I hear loads of people do those, and it just sounds like they're reading from a script. It's like, and this weekend, it's our winning weekend, and you can win tickets to, say, like, just put it into your own words, spend time on doing that, and speak it like you would like we would now, you know. And I think it's important to have the basics and the kind of what I call service links on your demo as well. I think if you have a mixture of personality and good service links, where you can really sell, you know, the weather or the music or the promotion, I think that will also bear you in good stead. I mean, and there's nothing to say that you can't put a little bit of your personality in the cell.
Is it important to know the brand as well? In other words, if you were going to send a demo to Absolute Radio, would it be a different demo than you were sent to Radio 1?
Absolutely. I mean, I've worked on quite a lot of different formats, as you have, and I think it is important to know your audience, which they should be able to tell you. You should know who you're talking to at all times. I kind of always have not a person, but I have the age group in my head, and I have the kind of things that they do and things that they want to know and hear. I always have that in the back of my mind, whichever radio station I've been on. I think, like, when I was at Heart, obviously that was a very, very different format to what I would eventually do at Radio 1. And people always say to me, well, how did you make that transition? Because you were young, but you were on an adult contemporary radio station.
Scott, I was going to ask you that, because when I arrived at Heart, you were already there. And I was wondering how this young guy could sound so good at playing Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison, and yet you didn't really know. How did you do that?
Like I just said, I think it's just that thing of, you've just got to get in the headspace of whichever radio station you're on. Even if you don't particularly like it, I think that I have self-motivation, like, every day, and I think that's the key as well. Like, don't expect your radio station controller or boss to be coming down and telling you how brilliant you are every 5 minutes, because it just doesn't happen. You've got to find something from in here somewhere every day to think, I need to make today a good show. And I think a lot of people can just coast it and sound not interested. I mean, we've all heard bored DJs.
Sorry, that's the dog. Sorry, God, I apologise. Right. That's the postman here, I think. Right. Give me 1 second. It's really good at the moment, so thank you.
Let's pick that up. Okay. Yeah. I think that I have a lot of self-motivation and try and make the show the best show it can be for whatever format I'm on. And don't ever think that the boss is going to come down every 5 minutes and tell you how brilliant today's show was, because they won't. At some stations, they'll be really heavy-handed and you'll see the boss every day, and at some stations, you'll never see him, or hardly ever. So, yeah, I just think it's about treating this job as it is a job, and you're delivering something, and therefore you want to be good at that. it's like bad service in a restaurant. Nobody really wants that. I don't want to switch on the radio and hear someone that's not interested.